Hi, welcome. My name is Gloria Carrasco, and my session is going to be about Beyond the Hype, a practical guide to discussing AI with students. So, we have been, we know AI has been out for about 2 years now. I know probably even longer, but, the way it's affected education, it's been about 2 years, and it's been a real disruptor. But I'm here to kind of help you out with a few things. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Gloria Carrasco. I am an instructional technologist. I work for Holy Family University, and I am in the academic technology department. My passion is teaching and learning. So I taught for about I've been teaching for 30 plus years. I taught K through 12. I was an English teacher in middle and high school. And I also taught ESL students. And now, for the past few years, I've been teaching online. And I absolutely love teaching. So I'm here for you because teaching, there's so much involved in teaching. It's not just about teaching the content. There's so much more involved, being there for students, creating a safe space, lots of different things. So one of the things I want to be clear about is that AI will never take your jobs. Okay? Because teaching is relational. Okay? It's building a relationship with our students so they feel good and they feel, safe so that they can learn, right? So they will never take a job away from you, right? So please know that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to help you use AI in order to help you with teaching, but I'm also going to help you, with talking to your students about AI, because it is important, because it's something else that they really have to, understand and know how to use in the correct way. So here we go. The workshop will involve a few things. So let me put this up here. That's better, a little better. So understand AI fundamentals and its role in education. Developing a plan, right? So making sure we have a plan in order to kind of go either use AI or not use AI in your class. Whether you use it or not, that's okay, but you're going to have to talk to students about it, right? Just be transparent about what your take is, and that's okay. Next, address ethical concerns and promote responsible AI use, right? So talking to your students about this, and also understanding what the limits that AI has. Engage students in meaningful discussions, because it's not just one, it's going to be several discussions about AI. And academic integrity in AI. I'll give you a little bit of a heads up on what we can do to, talk about plagiarism and things like that. So let's go to the next part. So the first part is understanding AI fundamentals. So know that there's lots of different artificial intelligence tools, right? But in terms of education, in terms of what's out there, what's more prevalent is using large language models such as ChatGPT, but also there are lots of AI tools that can be very helpful for students and even for ourselves. So let's go ahead. So large language models, LLMs, and AI tools. So these models train on data. So they are trained on data. So whatever company creates this, it's the data that they're fed, right? So a lot of the times they scour websites, they have books, articles, and they learn language in terms of like tokens, like language tokens, right? So in a sense, they're almost like what Grammarly does, right? They're kind of trying to think of what the next line is, in a sense, right? So really, that's really what it's all about. It uses whatever data is out there, okay? And it's not accessing real-time data. So some of them could be like 2 years behind. Some of them are a little bit more timely. But again, it's like whenever they were fed that data, that's it, right? Now, I'm sure they kind of maybe such, when you have like an iOS or the content is being updated, maybe they do that, but I don't know about that yet. Anyway, so it's something to think about. But in terms of enhancing education, there's so much that these large language models can do, and the AI tools too. So they can automate routine tasks. And what I mean by that is like, guys, as educators, we have so much on our plates. So if this can help us really take time for us to be more present in our classrooms, to take more part in that. So when our classrooms we're observing our students, we're there and not like doing little busy work, things that we have to do, right? Because maybe we have to create newsletters, maybe we have to create an email for parents. That's what AI can help you with. And there's lots of other things that we can do, but I'll talk about that in a sec. So it can also generate content. So if you're creating courses, this is great. If you are trying to personalize learning because you have a student that is, needs a little something extra in terms of like maybe they need more time or maybe they need assignment redesigned, this can really help you. Okay. In the past, things like this would take us hours, right? And maybe you've been using, teachers pay teachers, because I did that too, right? And maybe you can still do that, but know that this can really help you. So, instead of paying for that, you can use this kind of co-intelligence to really help you. All right. And so some of the key capabilities of these large language models and AI tools. It can generate lesson plans. These are mostly large language models. Educational materials, right? Content. It can summarize and simplify complex topics. So if you've got a student that is struggling with reading, you can make that content, that reading much more simplified. So maybe you can put it at a 4th grade level or whatnot, something like that. Now, in terms of automating grading and assessments, I don't mean for us faculty, for us instructors. I mean more than anything for like AI platforms. So for example, if you're working with a learning platform for reading or a math platform or a e-textbook, right? They have AI in them because in order for them to kind of, give students a more complex problem or give students an easier problem based on what they can do within that platform, that's AI, right? So that's what I'm really thinking about. Next, adapt content to meet individual student needs. So this is so helpful in that. Again, but in a sense, when I kind of wrote this, I'm kind of rethinking this and I'm saying, let's not do this. Let's just use universal design for learning as our lens. So instead of thinking about one particular student, we're thinking with, universal design for learning. That way we can kind of help all our students. Because sometimes our students, we know about what their learning disabilities are, but maybe we don't, right? So this is really good in every way. And that is what really, really helpful with a large language model. It'll help you make those lesson plans that have, different ways of generating, giving students your content in different ways, of making assignments that can be done in different ways. So students can choose to do a video or to do, a written assignment. So you can give those students options, choices. And this is what large language models can really help with. Because that would take us hours, now it takes seconds. All right, so some key capabilities of these large language models. For example, here I just give you an example of ChatGPT, but most of these models do this, right? So it can generate lesson plans, quizzes. It can create quiz questions like this. Like you give it a PDF and it can create quiz questions based on your PDF, based on your video. It's incredible. Discussion prompts. That's very helpful because you can just put your instruction, your learning objectives, and say, hey, I have these learning objectives for this module. Can you create a discussion prompt that would really help me with this? And it does it. Summarize complex topics for easier understanding, definitely. Assist in gradings with rubric-based feedback. So yes, rubrics take a long time. So you want to use this to really help you create those rubrics, right? Now, the only thing is that it can be very wordy. So it usually comes up with like rubrics that have like 10 criteria. So just tell it, revise it and say, you know what, I only want like 4 criteria and it'll do it. Next, supports brainstorming and research. So yes, so you can use these tools to brainstorm and to do further research. It's much better than Googling. Of course, if you want to Google, that's fine. But I'm telling you, if you haven't started using this yet, use it. It's better than Google. And I'm going to show you an LLM that can be more helpful than others in terms of like research. All right, next. these are not tools that most faculty use. This is TurboLearn is an example of an AI tool. So an AI tool is not a large language model. It's just basically an app. So it can create personalized learning experiences, automates formative assignment assessments like quizzes, provides real-time analytics on student progress. So for example, there's one that kind of, if you give it a PDF, it'll create quiz questions for the students. It'll summarize it. So it's actually very helpful for those students that maybe are not good at, studying, right? So I'm going to show you these tools. And the reason why I'm going to show you these tools is that so you can make it maybe part of your classroom and you can teach students how to use it, right? Using AI for good. Now, adapts content based on student needs. So this is really helpful. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So if you want to know more about AI, and it's a good thing to do because you can really learn what things that it can do, what it can't do, and some of the background information on it. So this book is one of my go-to books about, if anybody says, how do I learn more about AI? This book, Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. So and I'm just going to kind of guide you through a few of the principles. So the first thing he says is always invite AI to the table because yes, he's also a faculty member and he integrates AI into lots of aspects of his work. And it makes it, oh my God, it's going to make your life so much easier if you integrate it into your work, right? Next, be the human in the loop, right? So AI hallucinates, it can lie. So you have to be the human in the loop because you have to make sure that, you work with it. You ask it to revise things because it's going to come up with things that do not even exist. Like, for example, whenever I ask it to give me a lesson plan, sometimes it'll come up with and use, what's that, learning, what is it called? Learning styles. And learning styles is a myth. But because of the data that it's being fed on, it'll come up with learning styles all the time. It'll use it in its content output, right? So I have to say, hey, can you please take it out because learning styles is a myth? And it'll correct itself and say, hey, you're right. And then it'll give me the output I really want, right? So you have to be the human in the loop and correct it and revise it. All right, next, treat AI like a person, but tell it what kind of person it is. So you can engage with AI and say, hey, I want you to be George Washington, and I want you to tell me about this part of history from your point of view. And it's really cool to kind of do things like that because it's something that maybe you want to take into your classroom with your students. And then you can see what are the fallacies because it's going to come up with information that is wrong. So you have to kind of go in there and be the critical thinkers and, see, okay, what's wrong with this one? All right, next. Assume this is the worst AI you will ever use. So true, because it will have inconsistencies, inaccuracies, and definitely biases. And we'll talk more about that later on. So, large language models. We're going to take a look at a few here. And now, I am not, promoting any of these. It's what I use. So you use what you know, and that's fine. So the ones that I am using right now are Gemini, Perplexity, Copilot, and ChatGPT. And with these 4, I don't really need any more. I think this is fine, right? There are lots of different ones and new ones, but again, you don't need all of the new ones and the hype and all that. These will do the work just fine. Now, if you want something more intricate, since, maybe you want to go and look for that. But right now, for just general purpose, these 4 are fine. Now, make sure that you know that some of these, you're going to need to log in, right, and create your own. And with some of these, for example, at Holy Family University, I can use my ChatGPT to create an account with my Holy Family University email. I can also do it with Copilot, and I can do it with Perplexity. But I cannot do it with Gemini. Even though we use Google for education, we do not have access to this. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. So I have a personal email account because I like to know about the main ones, right? So I use it for personal reasons. And the other one the reason I'm paying for Gemini is also because I wanted to find out more about the new reasoning models. And Gemini has a reasoning model included, and it's incredible to kind of look at it, and it gives you an idea. As it's coming up with the output, it tells you how it's thinking. So it's kind of incredible. So that's why I like using Gemini. Anyway, so again, these are some other things that you can do, these examples of what you can do, but the big one is lesson planning, right? And, I know for example, maybe you already have a lesson plan, right, given to you, and that's fine, but you can always revise it. That's what I've been doing. I've been revising my lesson plans. I have been revising my modules in order to make them more, with the UDL lens. I'm also revising my modules because I'm looking at some of my learning objectives, and I'm seeing the word understand, and I'm like, no, that's not a good learning objective. So I'm revising everything. So, these large language models can really help because I can create entire units, entire modules based on work that we have worked on together. And I'm talking about co-intelligence, such as the large language model. All right, so I'm going to put my instructional design hat on, right? And one of the things that I do with faculty, and because I also teach my own classes for education, for the School of Education, but I have been looking into placing open educational resources. So if you're kind of headed that way, this is something that the large language models are incredibly helpful with in a few ways. So first of all, you're always going to think, you're going to start with the learning objectives, right? So you're going to think, you're going to start with the end in mind. So whether that's course learning objectives or student learning objectives or module learning objectives, it's always going to start with the learning objectives. So if I'm developing readings and multimedia, I'm going to go into my large language model and say, hey, I would like for you to create content, to give me content, readings, multimedia, podcasts, videos, and scholarly articles based on these learning objectives or these course learning objectives. And it will. The only thing is that it will give you some generalized things. It won't give you the exact titles of specific articles sometimes, and sometimes it will, but be careful because it has given me links that don't work. So, you have to kind of be mindful, but it can give me a broad idea of what websites to look at for this content, which is really great. And the next one is redesigning assessments with this. So again, starting with my learning objectives, right? So I'm going to say, hey, this module, these are the 3 module learning objectives. Can you give me an assessment that would go with these learning objectives? And it gives me, and I ask for a list of, like, let's say name 5. And it'll give me a list of 5 assessments that I can use. I hone in on one and I say, okay, I really want to use this one. And then I work with it to work on the assessment. And sometimes I'll have assessments already in those modules, but I want to make them more UDL. So again, I'm working with the large language model to redesign the assessments. And it's been incredible. I come up with stuff on, not me, the large language model comes up with it in seconds, and then I work with that. I work with the content. I'm not going to work with the first output because it's never right, because you're going to mold it into for something that fits your needs and your students' needs. Next is rubrics. Again, rubrics would have taken me such a long time. So I also do the same thing here. Say, okay, now that we've got this assessment, can you give me a rubric for this assessment? And it will. And as I told you before, it's like, 10 criteria. I'm like, no, please give it to me with 4 criteria. And I kind of work with it so it gives me the rubric that I really want. Next, so open educational resources, that's something that, this is very helpful in helping you recreate your modules, whether you're teaching face-to-face or online, it doesn't matter. Things can always be reassessed and improved, right, in order to better fit the students' needs. All right, let's go next. So here we have it. We have ChatGPT, and I call it ChatGPT. Hold on, let me move this a little bit. There we go. I call it ChatGPT because it's it gives you a lot of output, sometimes like way too much. So we have to, again, work with the output and then kind of tell it to what we really need and say, you know what, I like what you told me about this, but if I'm going to use this stuff, like let's say you're using a newsletter, you want to make sure, can you give it to me in a paragraph with some bullet points? And then, that way you're choosing the readability, you're improving the readability of whatever output it gives you. So one of the things that ChatGPT has that a lot of people don't know about is that it has like a few different components on the top left. We're going to talk about in a second. But most large language models will give you what you see on the left, which is, all of your chat history. That's only if you log in, right? So if you log in and you have an account, it will have a chat history for you. Now, what's great about having the chat history is that you can actually go back to that chat and talk to it again if you need something and you need to revise something or you need to work with that. So for example, if I'm working on an AI tools workshop invitation, I want to go back to it and use it again, but maybe I want to use it for a different date or whatnot. You just go back to it and redo it all over again. It's great. Next. So here we look at, again, ChatGPT and exploring GPTs. So exploring GPTs, what this is really about is you have different points of topics right here. So you've got writing, productivity. So these are GPTs. So they're more like they're chat tools that are aligned with a specific topic. So here you have CodeTutor, TutorMe, Summarizer. I haven't really used it, but I wanted to let you know that it's there. So if you want to kind of take a look at them, do that. All right, let's go to the next one. Now we have also in ChatGPT, Scholar GPT, which I really think is great. I've used this one before. So again, Scholar GPT, it will find its data, the data using Google Scholar, Just, or any of those databases. Now, it's great for us because we have knowledge that's accessible, right? However, I don't know, if this content was freely given. So just be careful with that, just so you know. All right, so the next one I want to talk about is Perplexity. This is one of the ones that I really like because it gives you like a really good read on what you can do with, like, where it gets its content from, right? Because normally with ChatGPT, you have no idea. Now, it's gotten better because if you take a look at some of the ChatGPT now, it has some footnotes, right? It has footnotes, which is actually pretty good, right? So what I wanted to let you know is that Perplexity, one thing, there's a few things about it. So Perplexity is different in the sense that students you don't need to log in order to use it. So if you want to use it with your middle school students, or if you're teaching high school, or, whatever, teachers can actually do that and they don't have to worry. But if you're a faculty member, most of your students probably have, different AIs that they're working with, right? In the college environment. So you don't have to worry about that too much, but if you want to use it with your students in your college classroom, right, or your high school classroom, students don't have to create a login. So what's nice about it is that if you want to start infusing your lessons with AI, you can do that using Perplexity because students don't need to log in. Now, it will not have the chat history because they haven't logged in, but that's okay. But the other nice thing when using it with students that something that's really good about it, that's different than other sources, is other LLMs, is that it gives you sources. So you can have your students use Perplexity and to kind of find out about let's say a topic, but in the output, it's very generalized, right? Because it's kind of like your Wikipedia, because it's getting its information from different sources, right? However, the good news about Perplexity is that it does give you where it found all its information. Sorry about that. Where it found its information, right? So that's really nice because then students can go in there and then they can actually cite where they got it from because they can go into one of the sources. But I'm also going to let you know how to cite AI later on. But the other thing it has also search images on your topic, search videos, and generate images. Most large language models are now multimodal. All right, here we go. So here we have Perplexity. So again, here is most large language models have this, but if you click on Perplexity, this part is going to be a library. So it opens up to a library, and then you see all of your threads. And what's even great is that now it also creates collections for you. You're not doing it. You're not doing that. It's creating a collection for you based on, whatever you're asking it to do. So it's really incredible. So I really like Perplexity. All right, so here we go. All right, so this part is developing an AI integration plan. So AI usage in your course. So let's go. So the first thing I would tell you is that it would be really good if you were able to put it in your syllabus. So just so students know where you are with AI, right? With the use of AI in your course. So this is an example of that was shared by Lance Eaton at one of the workshops that I went to. And so it has a lot of different examples. And so you can, when you want to, you can click on it and you can find this Google document, right? And you can kind of, use it to create one of your own. Okay? So this is really helpful because students really need to know how you're going to be using AI in your course, or if they're not allowed to at all. Next, so this one is called Updating the AI Assessment Scale, and it's been pretty helpful for me and lots of other faculty. And really, the first thing I would do is talk to your students about this. So put it in your your LMS, for example, Canvas or whatnot. You can put it in if you use Google Classroom, in there too. But talk to your students. They say, okay, so my assignments are going to be based on it. Some of my assignments will have no AI, or maybe we're going to do number 2 where you use it for planning. So this is kind of helpful for you and your students to know what they can do with AI within your classroom. Now, if you do not want to use AI, that's okay too. That's up to you, right? But they just have to know, and maybe this will not be helpful for you in that sense. All right. The other one that I found really useful is AI and assessment. So these are all example assignments. I went to a workshop, I think it was called by Company Curie, and what they did is they used this model right here. They used this, and they created assignments based on these levels. So these are example assignments that you can look at to kind of, if you want to start using AI meaningfully in your course, this is a really good starting point. Look at their assignments and see how you can use it in your classroom and in your assignments, right? So it's just a really good source to have, resource. Next, the next one I found very helpful, and I put it, I'm teaching an online education course, so I put it in my education course. I also know that it was actually given to me by a colleague that teaches writing at the college, and she posted this in all the English 101 courses, right? And I think it's very helpful. So this is a handbook for leveraging technology. And it's really talking about AI research and writing, right? So this is Dr. Seichik, if I'm saying her name correctly, and she created a whole guide. It's like pages long. It's wonderful because you don't have to reinvent it. It's already out there. This Dr. Seichik has put it out there, so it teaches students how to use it in writing. It teaches students how to cite their sources for large language models or their, however they're using it. So I think it's excellent. So if you click on the PowerPoint, you'll be able to find it for yourself. And then if you can use it as is or adapt it to your classroom. So the next part is discussing AI with your students. How to use AI for good. All right, so the first thing I would probably take a look at is this. We have Bloom's taxonomy. So the Oregon State University has posted this, and I think it's really helpful, right? So how does AI fit into Bloom's taxonomy? So if you're like looking at your course content, or you're looking at reassessing some of the assignments, and maybe even like face-to-face assignments, what can you do with AI within your classroom? This is a really good idea. So for example, maybe you can have your students compare and contrast data from, two different large language models or whatnot. But, use this to guide you in creating assignments or assessments. The next one is actually something that I've been using too. So let me put this over here. So this is a template that was shared in a webinar, and it's a template created by Christina Demicelli. And if you click on it, you will be able to create your own in Canva. So you can just put your school's logo, your college logo in it, and so it's nice. So it's something that I would speak to my students about, and I say, hey, we're going to be using this semester. I wrote all the assignment content without consulting AI, so you're going to check this off, right? Or maybe they're going to write this off. I consulted AI Internet for Ideas, and they're going to click. And now they're going to tell you why, right? So I think it's just very helpful to have, so that way students can be very transparent about their use of AI in your course. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at using AI for good, teaching students how to use AI. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this is Google Notebook. Most students have Google accounts, especially in higher ed, right? And most of our institutions also use Google. So they should have access one way or another, right? So what I'm thinking, right, is for face-to-face classes, and because they usually, they can work in groups, right? This is something that's really helpful. And of course, you can also take it online, right? But what I would do is have students use Google Notebook in order to help them create, their own notes, better improve their notes and improve their knowledge of your content. So let's say that you posted something in your Canvas course, or you gave them a PDF, anything that you want. What they can do is that this Google Notebook will help them create a briefing doc, a timeline, a table of contents, questions based on whatever is being fed, whether it's a video, whether it's a PDF. It's incredible, right? So maybe they're even using it for, your lecture or whatnot, right? They recorded your lecture. But the other thing that is incredible is that, and you probably heard about this, is that it can create a podcast. So let's say students have like 3 pages of notes, right? And they can just put it in Google Docs, or they already have it, or they have notes that you have given them. They put it in Google Notebook and it'll create a podcast. So, the learning sciences have told us that having more engagement, the more engagement you have with the content, the more learning will stick. So this is really good because students work with this, again and again with the content, and they're learning it. It's really sticking. So this is actually really fun. And if you haven't tried it, try it. It's really cool. Next, the other one that you may want to talk to your students about is called Coconote. And this is an AI tool. So what you want to do is, this is what it can do, just to give you a heads up, is that it can create notes, flashcards, quizzes from any kind of content, multimodal, audio, video, websites, PDFs, whatever it is. It's incredible. So again, a lot of students have a hard time taking good notes. They don't really know how to take good notes, or they don't know how to study, or they study right before the exam. So maybe if you can help them learn how to take notes, learn how to study better. So maybe 3 weeks before the midterm, you can have them get into groups and have them, put their notes together and then upload them to one of these so it can create quizzes, right? Or flashcards. And that way they can test each other. And then, maybe a week before the exam, they can do it again. And that way, you don't have to create a study guide. They're doing it. And if they're taking initiative on creating their own, that's even better. Takes the work off of you. They can create really good notes. And if they need any help, if you want them to add something to the notes, you feed it to them. You give it to the students so they can feed it to their Coconote. But it's really awesome. So again, they can create their own notes using these. So it's really, really cool. And quizzes and flashcards. So it's incredible. It's something that's very helpful for students. So if you can teach your students how to use AI for good, this is one of the use cases. The next one is TurboLearn AI. This is another tool. And again, when they go to social media, they're being bombarded with all of this stuff, right? So again, you want them to use it for good. So this one of the things, it does the same thing as the other one we just saw, but it also records the lectures. So this could be good, and maybe you want to allow it. That's up to you. But for example, let's say a student, maybe they broke their hand, right? Or their wrist, and they can't write. So maybe you can allow them to use this so that they can record the lecture, and then they can notes can be generated from this for that one student. So this is, different ways of doing things. But again, it can also create those quizzes, flashcards that can be very helpful for student learning. So this is another way that you can help your students use AI for something that's really good, which is, really learning the content and knowing how to study the right way, and not just cramming at the end or teaching them how to take better notes. All right, so let's take a look at another topic here. This was called address ethical concerns with your students. So you really have to teach them the things AI cannot do well. So AI will lie. Okay, there are privacy issues and there are lots of biases, right? So let's take a look at those. So ethical concerns. So one of the things that we have to be careful of is do not put student data into AI. Even if it's a free AI or even if it's a paid AI, we don't know where the data that you put is going. So you have to be very careful. So do not put student names or any other personal information. And that goes, again, teach your students not to do this, not to put, your data or anybody else's data in AI, right? So that's something that we're going to have to talk to our students about. The other thing that we need to let them know is that AI hallucinates. You already know it lies. So we have to be the humans in the loop, right? That's what Ethan Mollick says. We have to really take a look at the output, and we have to think critically and say, is this correct? Because it might not be, right? And it can outright lie. And I'll give you an example. The other day I was working with one of the large language models, and I asked it to give me 5 quiz questions, true and false quiz questions, based on a video. And it did. So I'm like, okay, great. And then I asked it for something else, and then it said, well, I don't remember exactly what it said, but it said I wasn't actually able to access the video, but here's what I found. And I'm like, it lied to me. It gave me the quiz questions, and it never said that it didn't watch the video. So you have to be really careful because, again, I think it wants to make you happy and give you what you want, but it might not be actually doing what it says it's supposed to be doing. Or maybe it's a lie of omission, right? I don't know. Anyway, but just be careful with that. Now, next, AI biases. AI can be biased, right? Because it depends on how it's trained. But most of the data it's trained on, it's representing main cultures, right? And think about this, it's also trained on in English, right? Most of the content is in English. So it's not going to have a lot of information about other cultures, other societies, other languages. So we have to be really careful because it will be biased because it's based off of, whatever information is being fed. So we have to be careful. So a really good use case that Bonnie Stachowiak has, Teaching for Higher Ed podcast, and I listen to it all the time. But one of the things she said was she trains her faculty to check for biases by looking up topics like, for example, Latin American history. So they go as in small groups, they see how accurate the information is and note any errors or biases. And this helps them understand how AI can sometimes hallucinate and due to the lack of data on different cultures. So this is something that, again, you can work on yourself, but you can also teach your students to see this, to see that, the inaccuracies and the biases. So work with your students and have them do something like this, and I think it'll be a very valuable experience. All right, next, academic integrity and AI. And this is so we don't want to be the AI police. We have a lot to do. There's a lot we have to do. And, trying to find students who are using AI it's going to take a lot of time. And I don't want you to have to do that. So there's a few tips. So first thing, okay, is just kind of know that there, in a sense, when we're using large language models, the output can't really be considered plagiarism. Why not? Because it's not going to give you a word for word from a certain site. It synthesizes information from like 4 or 5 different websites, right? So this is the thing, or books or whatnot. So it's not considered plagiarism. However, it is an academic integrity issue because it is cheating, because it is not their own words, right? So, in terms of AI detection tools, a year ago, I would have said, no way. Your AI detection tools are not reliable. And I have kind of changed my mind. There are tools out there that are a little bit better. However, I would urge you not to use it as your only evidence against a student because it can be really harmful, especially in higher ed. Scholarships can be taken away. Maybe students, are coming from other countries, lose that course, and it's very difficult. It's very disheartening for students if they are false positives, right? And it's very difficult for them to have to prove that they actually wrote it. So what I would urge most educators to do is use AI as, a source, but then talk to your students. Say, hey, this is what I see. Can you tell me more about what you wrote? And you have a conversation with your student, right? And from there, you kind of take it and say, hey, you know what? I want you to rewrite it again, but I would prefer to see us use it as like a teaching moment. And again, that's just me. There's a really good podcast that I'm going to allude to that I think I have it in my references. But basically, this writing instructor, faculty, he said that he talks to his students about AI, and then it's a conversation about the process of writing and where they can use AI and where they can't, right? So usually when there's repeat offenders, then it goes to the next level. But the first time around, he just has a conversation with them, and he has them resubmit it, and he teaches the student how to use it and how not to use it. So I think this is a really great idea, making it part of the process, right? And there are some AI detection tools that are better than others. I am not promoting any of these, but for example, Turnitin has gotten better because it's not scouring like the internet. It's using its database of all these student writing and noticing what is not student writing, but it's based off of student papers. So it's actually a different process than GPT-0. So anyway, I just wanted to make you aware. And there are instructors that are using GPT-0 and a few others to check students. But again, if you're using that, that's okay, because it's kind of maybe confirming what you think is happening, but talk to your students about it so that you have no false positives. All right, so here are some AI resources. This is the Academic Technology AI resources. I have lots of them, and the podcasts that I really listen to are somewhere in there. It is a Padlet, so if you would like to take a look at it, it is there for you. You can just click on this and you will find it. Next, references. So here are some other references, and again, these are a lot of these authors are what I listen to. So this is the book Cointelligence, Leon Fersey, excellent, information, and just, Bonnie Stachowiak's or Teaching in Higher Ed podcast is excellent. This is the one that I was letting you know. This is called A Big Picture Look at AI Detection Tools. This one is really good because it really teaches you about what those tools are doing. So if you want to have a listen, it's a good one. And that is it. You can find me at, gcarrascoholyfamily.edu. You email me if you have any questions. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And that is it. I thank you very much for viewing and listening. And if you have any questions, let me know. Have a good one. Bye-bye.